Speaking of TCU, let's get to our games of the week because Mike Craven is a crazy man and he's going to try to do what no man has done. Actually, I don't know if no man has done it before, but he's trying to hit all half of the teams in the FBS in this state in one weekend. And we're starting off with this one. Mallory, let's go with the games of the week.
Let's get it. First, let's head over to TCU because they're hosting Texas Tech this week. Saturday, November 5th. At 11 a.m., you can watch it on Fox. TCU coming in as 9.5-point favorites. The over-under is set at 71. Craven, are you pumped for this game? Because I think the entire nation is also pumped for this game.
I'm pretty pumped for this offensive mind matchup. Yeah. Garrett Riley versus Zach Kittley is something I'm intrigued by. I'm concerned for Texas Tech that this one becomes a blowout, though, if they turn the ball over. TCU has the best turnover margin in the state at +6. Texas Tech has the worst at -7. Mm-hmm. That's like 123rd in the nation for Texas Tech. Giving up a lot of sacks. They're allowing 3.75 sacks per game. Texas Tech. Baylor turned them over 5 times. They sacked them 6 times, and they ran the ball down their throat. If I'm TCU, I know we talk a lot about Max Duggan, Quentin Johnson, that passing attack. I would look at Kendre Miller and says, this is your game. Mm-hmm. We're going to give you 30-plus carries, and you're going to run the ball down their throat over and over again. That's what Baylor did against Texas Tech. It kept that offense off the field. It kept that offense out of rhythm, and that helped the defense. So I think if you're TCU, you just look at the tape from last week, and you just follow that exact same recipe to beat Texas Tech. On the Texas Tech side, there's nothing they can do to fix their offensive line.
Right.
That's an off-season problem. That's probably a year or 2, 3-year problem,
maybe.
Right? And so that's going to require a whole overhaul. Zach Kittley's going to have to earn his paycheck this week and figure out which quarterback gives them the best chance, not overall as the best quarterback, but overall as the best quarterback behind this offensive line.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I wonder, because basically we saw last week, we saw Baron Morton, look like a quarterback playing behind a bad offensive line, but also playing like a quarterback still in his first year of starting.
Yeah, his 4th ever start.
Yeah, exactly.
3rd ever start.
Yeah. And so Joey McGuire kind of threw a lot at the wall, right? Just trying to see what stuck, right? He threw Tyler Shuck in there. He threw Donovan Smith in there. I would like to say he sticks with Baron Morton, right? I think last week was just like, hey, he's off today. We'll pull the young kid. We'll see what he's got. We know he's the future. His job's not in jeopardy. But I do wonder with that line of thinking about the offensive line a little bit. He's like, man, my guy's getting kind of banged up back there, right? Is this more of a Donovan Smith time for him? Now, I will say, does he also see TCU's defense as potential bait for Baron Morton, right?
TCU's not a big pressure defense.
Exactly. And we know their secondary can be got a little bit. And so does Baron Morton give you the arm talent to do that to where you're not as worried about him getting knocked around in the pocket a little bit? And maybe you don't want to sacrifice, because even though Baron Morton had turnovers last week, we know Donovan Smith is that kind of quarterback.
Yeah, he also threw one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so out of 2 passes, he had like 2 passes.
All 3 quarterbacks threw an interception for Texas Tech last week.
So nobody's turnover prone, and nobody's turnover.
Tyler Shuck's first pass back was a pick 6.
Oh no!
Wasn't it like that was such a weird situation? They threw him in like the shadow of his own goalpost. Yeah. Like it was very weird.
They ran an out.
Yeah. I don't know. That last week was just a lot for Texas Tech. But, none of these quarterbacks are turnover averse, I'll say. And so I would probably presume that Baron Morton would stay in there, particularly because you're going to need an arm to get you out of this game. So, yeah, I'm fascinated by this one. This one probably can get in the 40s, but I'm worried that TCU can get in the 50s potentially. Like, that's my kind of worry with this as far as if I'm Tech.
Yeah, I think – Sonny Dykes and Joey McGuire are in their first year at their program.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how different of a situation they stepped into.
Right. Yes.
You talk to Sonny Dykes, and he said all offseason that offensive line is the strength of his team. And 4 of those 5 guys were there when he got there.
Yep.
He brought over, Alan Ollie from SMU. But other than that, those guys were there. I was around that Texas Tech football team for 48 hours. They're small.
Yeah.
They're just not a big unit. And so that's going to take – you can fix your skill position through the transfer portal. You can fix some of your defensive problems through the transfer portal. Offensive line, defensive line has to be recruited and developed. And what we saw last week for Texas Tech is a Baylor team that had 3 years of that versus a Texas Tech team that only had 1. I know that Tech and TCU are on even playing fields in terms of this coaching staff development, but it feels like TCU is just light years ahead in terms of just offensive line talent.
Right. I mean, you look at the situations in which their previous coaches came in, right? Texas Tech was trying to establish a completely new identity with an outsider coach, and TCU is a legacy built up over 20 years. That just happened to the main guy happened to maybe lose touch of what made that program successful. So, yeah, different scenarios completely. So, yeah, it didn't surprise me that they're completely working with two different situations there. What's next, Mallory?
Our next game of the week is Ishes. Texas traveling to play Kansas State this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on FS1. Texas coming in as 2.5-point favorites, and the over/under is set at 54.5. Are y'all surprised that Texas is favored on the road?
Craven, I will pass the ball to you, buddy.
I am floored by this. Texas is 1-6
Yeah.
on the road in Steve Sarkisian's first 20 games. And that one win was over a TCU squad that fired Gary Patterson 2 months later.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they haven't beaten a good team on the road. I watched Kansas State in the lobby of a Lubbock airport beat Oklahoma State 48-0
The worst loss in Mike Gundy's career.
with a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
With a backup
Like-
quarterback.
Until Texas proves that it can go on the road and close a game, I know that they can go on the road and get a lead
Sure.
in a game. I've
Right.
seen them do that a decent amount of times, a double-digit one in the second half even.
Yep.
But until they prove that they can hang on to one over 4 quarters on the road against a good team, for me, I can't see it happening. When I saw this line come out on Sunday, I immediately jumped on it.
Yeah, last week might have been the most confusing blowout I think I've ever seen. And that's not hyperbole. Legitimately confounding, confusing. I just checked the score and was like, what's happening? Like, people say, well, Spencer Sanders wasn't it? Well, they were getting beat when Spencer Sanders was in the game too. So that wasn't
They were just
wasn't just a back.
Spencer Sanders doesn't play defense.
I was about to say, and so I agree. We just do not know that this Texas team, 1, can play 4 quarters, and 2, can play on the road. Right?
I would be
and so,
terrified if I was Texas.
it's so we were talking about this before the show. Every underlying metric loves Texas.
Loves them.
Absolutely. SP Plus has them 6th. Right? What was the other metric you were referencing? Has them top.
FPI has them top 10, I think, as well.
So what is this? And this kind of, I guess, this answers the road and second half question. Is that an indictment or a flattering of Steve Sarkisian? I think in combination with the second half performances and the lack of ability to win on the road, that is an indictment. You have this talented roster that's putting up insane numbers, and you're not winning. You're not winning.
Blue chip ratio suggests you're the best team in the Big 12. Defense, the best scoring defense in the state,
Yeah.
right? Top 25, 28 scoring defense in the nation. You got Bijan Robinson. You got Quinn Ewers. You have a pretty talented offensive line. Everything is there and points to Texas being a much more improved team this year. Yet they're 5-3. They blew a lead on the road against Texas Tech. They blew a lead on the road against Oklahoma State. I'm a proof in the pudding kind of guy.
Sure.
And we've seen over and over again this Sark-led team disappoint. They're 10-10 in his first 20 games.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Strong was 9-11.
Yeah.
And so this is what this team is. I just feel like you got to prove it before you kind of start earning those gambling lines. But that said, this feels like the most important 2-game stretch for Sark.
Mm-hmm.
You play Kansas State on the road this week, and then you have TCU at home next week. Those are the 2 best teams in the Big 12. If you can win both of those games, I think at that point you can point to the project working.
Yes.
But if they lose both of those games, specifically if they lose those things in convincing fashion and they're 5-5 going in the last 2 games, and now you got to find a win to even get bowl eligible. I mean, Arch Manning being committed is the only thing keeping us from talking about Steve Sarkisian on the hot seat, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
At that point.
Yes, exactly. I think at bare minimum, they need 1-1. At
Yeah.
bare minimum, you need to steal 1, and you cannot lose either by double digits.
Yes.
You cannot be outclassed
Or
in
blow
either
a second half lead.
Exactly.
It just you can't
These have
keep
to be-
following your own path.
These have to be competitive games where you're in it for 4 quarters, and we haven't seen it. I think, and I will say, and we credit Steve Sarkisian with the offense. I don't know how much we credit him with the defense. I know he's the head coach. I know it's not as linear as he has nothing to do with the defense if he's an offensive play caller. But I'll say this much. The Athletic put out their stop rate article for the most improved teams through the month of September. Texas has the number 1 most improved defense in terms of stop rate in the Power 5. They
In the
went
Power
from a
5.
64% percentage stop rate to a 69.7 nice stop rate in the month through the month of October. Right?
Gary Patterson is good
Yes.
at defensive play.
But you
calling.
know what that means, right? Hey, Sark, your offense needs to step up, right? And we know how pretty his concepts can be. We obviously saw what he did with Alabama. We know that he's the guy as far as that's concerned. Top 5 play caller in the country, potentially.
So
But
what
this
is
defense-
it? I mean,
Well, no, we talked. It's
the culture, right?
No, it's the second half. I think he feels himself a little too much. When a quarterback, when Quinn Ewers is off like last week, right? He wants to be the guy to get him out of it, right? He wants to be like, all right, I got it. I can scheme my way out of this, right? Instead of just getting back to basics, you have 2 running backs who are going to be playing in the NFL next year. They completely ignored the running game in the second half, and it's not always the running game, but it's always something in the second half to where I think he
ignore.
He's such a he's such a savant when it comes to offensive scheme that I think he wants to continue to work it out himself, right? He's like, no, I got this.
he
right?
sees it and he goes, "Well, that guy was open."
Right.
And he's not wrong.
Right.
But
it's like,
sometimes your players
quarterback's
can't
not-
get it there.
I was about to say, Quinn Ewers is off.
It's
He's
not a
gonna get
video
it to-
game.
Yes.
You know, and so like just because you scheme a guy open doesn't mean you can get him the ball. Last year he overestimated his offensive line's ability to protect a quarterback.
Right.
And this year he's overestimating his quarterback's ability to be consistent. 2 weeks ago when they were playing against Oklahoma State, that game called for more short, intermediate routes to help Quinn Ewers get some confidence. And he just didn't do it. They kept taking big shot after big shot after big shot. I think I agree with Ish to where it's almost a victim of his own genius. He's like so confident in his ability to go score points that sometimes he doesn't read the game well and make the adjustments that are necessary in that game. He still sees it as just the chalkboard.
Yeah. So that's my thing. And the problem.
And it's a locker room that's not used to winning.
yes. And
so part of it is, I guess, culture,
yeah,
right?
sure. You're trying to turn that mentality, right?
I think it's a bunch
Right.
of players in there that aren't. I'm not calling them individually losers,
Right.
But they've done a lot of losing.
Yes.
To where it gets into crunch time and they go, you can only revert back to experience in the moments of pressure,
Right.
good
Here-
or bad.
The here we go again mentality.
UTSA wins all the close games, and you can see them like feel fine in those moments, right? Because they've done it over and over and over again. Sam Kahn had a great article out today about Frank Harris and UTSA and how they do that. Texas is on the other end of that spectrum where they've experienced heartache after heartache after heartache to where like they're trying not to lose and they're playing tight and they get worse as the game goes on because they start thinking about it. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you fix that other than like you just win.
Yeah.
Right.
They just need for lack of a better word, a slump buster.
Yeah.
Like they just need one of those.
And honestly, I mean, we kind of thought it would be that against Iowa State, right? Especially after what Brees Hall said last year and all that stuff. This could be it against Kansas State, right? Kansas State's one of the best coach teams, probably just coach teams in the country for what they are, for Chris Kleiman, what he's been able to establish there. The fact that they can go in with Will Howard last week and just dominate Oklahoma State without running the ball as much as they have been, right? Will Howard threw a ton, and it was Deuce Vaughn doing a lot. If they can go in and really match a team that's well coached on the road, okay, that becomes now your linchpin win, your linchpin moment of your career if you're Sarkisian. So, yeah, it's huge 2-game stretch. Like I said, at worst, you need 1-1, and you cannot be out of the game in any of these scenarios.
Yeah. Well, they're moving to the SEC, so I don't know if the winning culture, the losing culture is going to
You got to. I was about to say you got to fix it now because you're not going to fix it.
Yeah, I was going to. Yeah,
in 2
you got to
years.
start fixing that now, or it's not happening. So, all right, let's move on to our last game of the week, and it's mine. UTSA playing UAB this Saturday at 2:30. You can watch it on Stadium once again. We love that Stadium Conference USA duo that we got going on. UTSA coming in as 1-point favorites. The over/under set at 52. This one is going to be, I think this one's going to be a really, really good game.
You could see the. I'm thinking of the Dave Chappelle, Rick James gif with the AAC. It's like
Yeah.
when they see that stadium deal, they're just like UTSA. Come on over.
I
buddy.
think Conference USA is trolling the teams that are leaving.
That'd be
I
would
think
not put
it's
it
a
past,
conspiracy
especially-
theory
es-
that no
They're
one
like,
wants to
oh,
talk
okay,
about.
well, you're on Stadium.
Well, especially because the two of the teams that are leaving are like probably going to be in the conference championship.
I know.
Conference championship game might be on Stadium.
How much you would have bet?
You know what? I'd respect conference.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah, that's our kind of
I
petty.
would too. I would too.
No, this one's going to be a lot of fun. I agree. I think I'm trying to figure out how to read this game exactly because I'm trying to figure out how to read UAB.
Yeah, I was going to say, quietly, UAB's not good.
They're
not,
4-0 at home, and they're 0-4 on the road. So
Well, they
they've
just
got
lost
that
to
home.
FAU.
Yeah, they're on a 2-game skid, I think.
Yeah. Western Kentucky and FAU, they've lost back-to-back games. That's a great point by Mallory. They have been a different team at home, and so we'll see what that's like.
UTSA is also 3-1 on the road too.
You give
so-
Jeff Traylor an extra week to prepare, and I'm taking Jeff Traylor.
Yeah.
Sure.
This is how I see that.
Sure.
They have more weapons. They have 3. So there's 2 teams in the nation with 3 wide receivers on the Bolitnikoff list right now. One is UTSA. The other is Ohio State.
Yes.
Right?
Tell me the difference. You
So-
can't.
Right. Right. It's like seeing the Spider-Man meme, right? And so, like, I believe in the Roadrunners' ability to score, even with the offensive line injuries. I would imagine the extra week really helps the defense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going to be without Rashad Wisdom, and you
Yep.
could tell that hurt that secondary against North Texas. I would imagine they're more prepared, more organized, a better secondary. It just feels like one of those games that UTSA would have to turn the ball over a few times to lose. And to
Sure.
UAB's credit, UTSA has a -6 turnover margin. You know, they have been bad turning the football over. The thing, though, with UAB is if we look into the numbers, they're bad in the red zone. Offensively and defensively, they are bad in the red zone
Yep.
scoring touchdowns. If UTSA can force field goals, I believe in the offense enough to score touchdowns to outscore UAB.
And also, do we know the quarterback starting for them?
No.
'Cause it was Jacob Zeno last week,
Yep.
formerly of Baylor, of course. It might be Jacob Zeno again, you know. So
San Antonio guy.
yeah, exactly. Jay?
Yep.
Yeah, San
Think
Antonio
so.
Jay. So, you know, it's
Could have gone to UTSA.
that's true. Yeah, you
Yeah.
did. Yeah. Oh, well, we'll see.
Because that was before Frank had taken over that job.
that is very true.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I mean, so we know they have a guy with arm talent, right? You know, whether he's the consistent guy that we kind of saw flash himself in the Big 12 championship that one time, I don't know, but I will say UAB's it's going to be a strength on strength matchup in terms of UTSA's passing versus UAB's secondary. I believe they're 12th in defensive EPA per pass, so that's their thing, but they're awful against the run. UAB's 102nd in rushing EPA on defense. So I don't know. UTSA's obviously lived through the air in this whole year because one of obviously offensive line issues, but also the backfield's been banged up. They kind of been inconsistent. So it might just be where UTSA's talent just wins out over their strength, which I probably would bet on anyway because nobody stopped that secondary all year. But yeah, the thing about Mallory, the thing Mallory mentioned about there being a different team at home versus on the road is interesting. But also, she also mentioned UTSA wins on the road as well. So it's definitely not the UAB we've been accustomed to seeing, that powerhouse under Bill Clark, of course, since he's been gone. But I do think we're running out of teams that UTSA can kind of pencil in as them struggling against towards the end of the year. I feel like Rice, they have Rice in 2 weeks, but it's kind of UAB and Rice as far as like the teams that I feel like, ooh, they can give them issues. And
if they beat this team, that gives them a tiebreaker over North Texas, UAB, and Western Kentucky. They're basically in the conference championship game at that point. So, and if it's a close game, I'm taking UTSA. They're 16-6 in one possession games since the start of 2020. So this line is 1 point. That suggests it's a close game. You know, the Roadrunners have proven that they know how to win those games.
mm-hmm.
All right, let's switch into the wide zone. Congrats, Craven.
Thank you.
Let's start off with Houston at SMU this Saturday at 6 p.m. It says you can watch it on NFL Network. Is
NFL
that
Network.
correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
Getting a
SMU.
Rashee Rice preview.
Yeah.
SMU coming in as 2.5-point favorites. Over under set at 67.5.
Is
Speaking
Tanner
of
Mordecai
lines,
playing?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's going to play. Breaking.
You heard it here first.
If Joe Hoyt probably has.
You heard it here
I
second.
haven't looked on Twitter today. I haven't looked on Twitter today, so I don't want to steal any scoop or anything. But he's going to play.
Yeah.
Speaking of lines, I was surprised by.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised to see SMU favored by 2.5. I thought this would be even or Houston -3. Clayton Tune in that offense has been excellent since the bye week. 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, over 300 yards per game, completing 76% of his passes since the idle week. SMU's, you know, even with Tanner Mordecai back, he hasn't played in a couple weeks.
Sure.
You know, so there's going to be some rust there. For me, this is about whichever offensive line protects better. Because getting to the quarterback's the only way either of these defenses can stop the other. Because both secondaries stink.
Right.
Houston is better at rushing the passer than SMU, but I think SMU's offensive line is better. So if you told me which quarterback deals with more pressure, I think I could tell you who wins the game. That makes me feel like Houston has the advantage.
Yeah.
And Houston has a better running game. Stacey Sneeds ran the ball pretty well the last 2 weeks. The offensive line seems to be figuring it out. I know it's on the road, but Ford Stadium's not this hard place to go play.
Right.
No, there was nobody there for the TCU game. So,
Well, they were
I
there.
mean,
They were there. They were just in line trying to get water.
yeah, that's a good point.
I was about to say, Craven, that was
Left
very
by
generous
half.
of you to say it's not a hard place to play. It's
Thank
probably,
you.
It's probably an
Thank
easy,
you.
pretty easy
Thank
place
you.
to play.
I have to. I got to cover all 12 teams. So I try to be kind of nice, but I don't think it's an intimidating place to play, and so I don't know if the travel's all that hard. So I think I lean Houston, but they're a hard team to count on with how they've played so far this year.
This is really Houston's first test after the bye week, right?
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
we mentioned the teams. We mentioned them needing the bye week and them looking good. They've played pretty bad teams after the bye week, but to be fair, they've looked more consistent since then. Or even honestly, if we take the whole season as a whole, Houston is on the upward trajectory
Yes.
as far as because when Tanner Mordecai was hurt, he didn't look great when he got hurt, right?
Yeah.
So he was starting to go kind of tail off a little
Turn
bit.
the
as
ball
well.
over a lot.
Exactly. And so it started to look like Preston Stone should have just been the guy for,
It did.
going forward. And
What a bad injury.
it was, I know, really unfortunate, man. Preston Stone was looking like the guy that SMU needed him and wanted him to be. Hopefully he comes back next year and looks pretty damn good, continues. But, yeah, Tanner Mordecai was kind of trending down a little bit. So, and I feel like as bad as Houston's defense has been, SMU's has been worse.
Yes.
Like, very much worse.
Secondaries.
Yes, exactly.
Very
Both
sad.
secondaries are a wash, but SMU's in particular has been god-awful. So I think that's why I lean Houston, too. Parker's numbers, Stats of War on Twitter, also like SMU slightly, right? It's like literally 50.5 for 49.4. Like very, very slim. But it is interesting. Like, are they not trusting Houston against those bad teams after the bye week? And are they just kind of looking at it? Because this is where kind of like analytics versus, kind of just observing the game kind of differs, right?
Yep.
You probably look at that and say, well, they beat a bad team. Who cares? But also, if you watch the games, you're like, they look crisper, right? They just look like they're executing better.
I would love to see the October splits.
Sure. Yes, very much so. That's a good point.
I'd love to see what that looks like over the first 9 weeks of the season and what it would look like if we just used the last 4.
Yes.
I
that's a
think
good point.
Houston would be a 60-40 favorite in that case if we only use the last month of the season.
And here's the thing here's where I would give SMU the slight edge if it hasn't been disappointing. I would love to see what happened to that SMU run game.
Yeah.
We thought that would be a deep backfield. I don't know what's going on with Kamar Wheaton, right? I don't know if that's just
Just
issues.
can't
discipline.
stay healthy. It's just
Right.
little
Yeah.
things. It's
And
just nagging.
but even
deal
it's
there.
not just him, right?
Yeah,
We feel like
Siggers.
exactly. We thought they would just have a deep backfield because that's where you could get Houston's front seven has been gashed through the run,
Yeah.
and that's where SMU could really win the game. They haven't run the ball well. They haven't run the ball really at all. And so the one real weakness of this Houston defense, worse than their secondary, is that front seven, and they can't take advantage of it. So yeah, I'll take Houston in this one.
Yeah. All right, next wide zone game. Texas A&M hosting Florida this Saturday at 11 a.m. You can watch it on ESPN. Texas A&M coming in as 3.5-point favorites. The over/under is set at 54.5. Florida's bad. They should. Florida's bad.
Florida's pretty bad. You kind of hope that the rhythm that they got into with Connor Wigman last year kind of carries over. We mentioned how A&M's kind of running out of games that they could probably be expected to win. This is one of them. You kind of hope this will be it, right?
Yeah, five game losing streak for the Aggies. They're lucky they pulled that Arkansas game, right? I mean, looking back,
100 yards
Yeah,
fumble recovery
right.
swung the game, man.
because they'd already be on the edge of bowl ineligibility with that loss. They can win 3 out of their last 4, and they got Auburn UMass or UConn in there. I can't remember which one off the top of my head
Oh,
for
yeah.
whatever reason.
UMass, I believe.
UMass. And then this Florida team that, as Mal mentioned, is not very good. So they could win their next 3. Connor Wigman looked great last week in spurts. Looked really good early, really good late. We'll see if he can get a 4-quarter football game. What I was excited about was his emergence kind of showed the talent on the outside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Evan Stewart's really good. Moose Muhammad's better than he gets credit for. I'm really high on Donovan Green. I think Donovan Green's going to be one of the better tight ends in the state. I think he takes a J.T. Sanders type jump as a sophomore. And it looks like Wigman, being a guy who's camped with those dudes, who probably played a lot with them in the spring and over the summer, had some good timing with them. What shocked me as much, I thought the A&M offense would struggle because I don't believe in Jimbo's system, and I just don't. Right? So I thought the offense would be not as bad as it has been, but I didn't think it'd be great. I thought the front 7 would be much better for A&M. They give up 390 yards rushing against Ole Miss, and then I went and looked at the stats. They only have 13 sacks on the whole year. That's with a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys up front.
Right.
They're just not getting it done on defense, and when your offense is struggling, you need to come up with big plays defensively. And they've been a decent scoring defense, but they're not making big plays. They're not getting turnovers. They're not getting sacks. They're not getting tackles for loss. And when A&M's been good under Jimbo, the defense has been opportunistic.
Sure. I will say this is going to be something that's weird for me to say about a Florida team. This is going to be the worst defense A&M probably faces. Like they have been awful this year. 42 points last week against Georgia, 45 given up against LSU. Even 24 against a pretty bad Missouri team. Like this team has 28 against South Florida, right? This has been a bad Florida defense.
Yeah.
And this could be a confidence builder for Connor Wigman, who operated pretty well outside of those middle 8 plays, right? We're kind of towards the end of the second half, or into the first half, start of the second half. They started great. They ended decently, not great, but decently. Connor Wigman kind of overcame a lot of the weaknesses we see. And also, I think Jimbo did make some adjustments as well. He schemed a lot of guys open. Those first opening scripts were pretty nice.
Yep.
And so it was a lot of stuff we had not seen this year. I think that might be enough to get past Florida, right? If they can get to the infamous 24, right? I think they could do it. But the only problem is last week was the only time they were able to do it in the past year. So
Yeah. And they're sitting at 3 wins?
3-5.
3-5.
3-5, so
gotta do. You just come
this
on.
one
And
needs to be it.
They finished with LSU, who's
Yeah.
getting good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
no,
so
that's not.
You got to
gonna be
win
a
the
win.
next 3 if you're trying to go bowl eligible. And with a young team like the one A&M has, those bowl practices are important for
Absolutely.
2023.
I was about to say, yeah, you don't got guys opting out. You're not going to get Evan
You
Stewart
get
opting out of a
15
bowl
extra
game.
practices.
Exactly.
And that can go a long way with a young roster.
Right. All right, moving on to our next wide zone game. Baylor traveling to play Oklahoma this Saturday at 2 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. Oklahoma favored by 3.
There are
Over-under set at
weeks.
57.5.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
There are weeks where I feel really aligned with gambling books.
Mhm.
And then there are weeks where I battle against the books, where I'm like, am I a genius? And
That's how you battle with it.
Right.
You're like, am I actually great?
right.
Am I
Apparently,
actually
Ish
good
has
at
just
this?
met me. This week feels like a weird week. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like the Texas-Kansas State line's out of whack. Here's another one I feel like is out of whack. Baylor's playing some really good football right now.
Yeah.
Oklahoma's still Oklahoma. I know with Dylan Gabriel back, they're not the team that Texas beat 49-0, but they're not that far off from that either. It feels like Baylor's starting to play the type of football they wanted to play the whole year because Richard Reese is becoming that dude. When he has rushed for 19 or more times in a game, they are 3-0. He has had over 30 carries the last 2 games. They leaned on Texas Tech. They beat him up in the trenches. That defensive line's starting to get good. They had 6 sacks. We talked about the lack of playmakers defensively. Had 5 turnovers, 5 interceptions against Texas Tech. Baylor can quietly still make some noise in the Big 12 if they win out. I feel like this is a game that's super important for Baylor. Oklahoma's not playing for as much. I think Baylor's a better version of what Oklahoma wants to become.
Sure.
So give me the Bears here, even though that they're road favorites or road underdog. I think I'd take them at the money line to pull this upset and make, because they still have Kansas State and TCU on their schedule. If they win out, there's a possibility there that Baylor can sneak in to a Big 12 championship game.
Yeah. Oklahoma has beaten Kansas without their quarterback and Iowa State, which is probably
They're not
sinking
good,
towards
yeah.
the bottom of the Big 12.
And
So
everybody's on the train again.
they put up 27 against like they didn't like kick Iowa State's butt, right? It was like Dylan Gabriel had less than 150 yards passing. They averaged under 3 yards a carry rushing. Like, it wasn't this glorious display. I agree, man. Like, we see what Baylor's looking like. They just kind of needed a running back. They needed Blake Shapen to kind of settle down a bit, and they've done that, and they look like the steady ship now, right? So I agree. This line's weird. I don't know if this is just kind of narrative, right? People like the biggest narratives we saw were Baylor's not as good as last year, and
Yes.
Oklahoma isn't as bad as maybe that blowout loss to Texas. So, like, I don't know if that's just kind of hanging over this game, but it feels like that's what people are betting on right
It's
now.
like, did they completely just throw away the game last week against Texas Tech?
I don't know
Because
how
they
many
look
people
so
watched it.
good.
Bro, I was about to say that might be.
You know, nationally, I don't know how many people pay attention to that kind of stuff. And then the other thing is this same Baylor team that lost on the road to West Virginia, lost on the road to BYU.
And I will say, we talked about underlying numbers with Texas. Oklahoma is a very similar underlying numbers darling. They are 12th in SP+, right? 9th in offensive SP+, 45th, of course, not great on defense. But it's one of those things where you're just like, I don't know. With Texas, I can see like the issue, right? We obviously see the second halves and the weird coaching decisions sometimes. But Oklahoma, I'm just like, I just don't believe you're this
You're a
good.
good
You're
team.
not there.
Right, I was about to
Yeah.
say, you are not there, right? Is it all just Dylan Gabriel? Is that how good he or valuable he is that he leaves and all of a sudden they become like a bottom 50 team in the country or what? I don't know, but yeah, there's something fascinating people about Oklahoma, and I just don't see it right now.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to our next wide zone game of the week. UTEP playing at Rice this Thursday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on CBS SN. Rice coming in as 3.5-point favorites. The over/under set at 49.5. Craven, does that worry you that Rice is coming in as the favored team when they crapped the sheets last week against Charlotte, coming in as
The Craven
17
Bowl.
favorites?
They were.
It is the Craven Bowl.
I'm honored by that. They were humbled last week.
They were very humbled
so
last
if
week.
Rice is paying attention to gambling lines, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
This one's an interesting game to me because they're both really bad,
Yeah.
right? And they both
Yeah.
do a lot of the same bad things. Like they both turn the ball over a lot. The only thing I can think of here is that the UTEP defense is actually better than Rice's defense. Do y'all want to guess who? I'm going to give this away by when I'm asking this question, but y'all want to guess who the worst scoring defense in the state is?
Is it UTEP?
It's the Rice Owls,
Oh, the worst-
33.6.
Oh, man. Okay.
We
because they
had a
turn-
50-50 chance,
They
and we got it
turn-
wrong.
They turn the ball over so much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much. And so for me, it's going to be about that. It's going to be which offense. The Rice offense is more explosive.
Yeah.
They have better wide receiver targets. TJ McMahon's probably a bigger upside quarterback. But again, they turn the ball over a lot. That defense last week for Rice just really concerns me.
Yeah.
Like Charlotte's not all that good, and they put up a lot of points on them. UTEP is on the road. This is a really important game. I know that's going to make some people listening to this chuckle, but whoever wins this game is right there for bowl eligibility at 5 wins. Whoever loses this game is pretty much out, and that's the barometer for both of these programs. If you're UTEP, you take a step back if you lose. If you're Rice, you're going to the drawing board if you lose. And so this feels like one of those Mike Bloomgren wins and protects his job or loses, and there's some concerns going in there. I don't know if he would absolutely lose it if they don't get to a bowl game, but it feels like going into the American, they're faced with the same choice that North Texas is.
Yeah.
Who needs this game more, Mike Bloomgren or Dana Dimmel?
Bloomgren, because
Bloomgren.
Dimmel already got his extension.
Fair. Yep, that is a good point.
And
You
they're
know?
staying in Conference USA. I feel like
That's also true, right?
Yeah.
You're more comfortable with UTEP. The pack is going to come back to you.
yes.
Right.
Whereas Rice, you're about to take a step even further.
Further.
And you haven't gotten to bowl eligibility since 2014. You haven't won more than 4 games under Mike
Yep.
Bloomgren. I feel like Bloomgren's making this program better, and they're more talented than they've been in the
Yep.
last 5 or 6 years.
I
But
agree.
you still got to have results. You still got to win football games. And if you're not winning them now, what suggests you're going to win them later?
Yeah.
Right, against better competition.
That's
so
a good point.
we need another 65-yard breakout touchdown run by TJ McMahon.
Yeah, seriously.
That was unbelievable. That was
might happen
ridiculous.
against UTEP. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next wide zone game of the week. It's North Texas hosting FIU on their homecoming this Saturday at 3 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. North Texas coming in as 21-point favorites. The over-under is set at 63.
So I'm going to give this away, similar to your last question where you gave it away by when you asked it. So there are 3 names. Actually, there are 4 names right now in the top that I want you to know as far as top touchdown passes in the nation. Drake May for North Carolina, C.J. Stroud for Ohio State, Caleb Williams for USC,
Austinani.
and Austin Hahn.
Yo,
for
let's
North
go!
Texas. 4th in the nation in touchdown passes.
Heisman. Heisman.
Listen,
Give it to him.
this
He is a
resurgent.
30-year-old Heisman.
He is 15th in passing yards this season, right? Behind names like only behind names like Herndon Hooker, C.J. Stroud, mentioned Caleb Williams, Frank Harris is up there as well. This guy's playing great. He's ahead of guys like Bo Nix, who probably will be in New York.
Yeah.
He's playing phenomenally. They're playing balanced football because their run game's still stellar. Please hammer this team. Please. It's homecoming. You're busting out the weird neon green with the weird worm helmets. I hate those things.
I love them.
Oh, I hate
I
those
love
things.
those
It's
things
ugly.
so much.
I hate them.
I like them.
I like them too.
I'm gonna wear my.
Mallory and I are
I have a worm
2-1.
sweatshirt. I'm gonna wear it tomorrow for you.
No, the
Yeah.
Jean
Just for
Joe
you.
Green ones are the ones that
We're
they should, the
2-1.
only
Yeah.
retros they should bust
ROF
out.
voted 2-1 on the worm uniform.
Awful.
Democracy here.
You had the mean Joe Green uniforms. Those would be the only retros you
I have
touch.
one more Austinani stat for you.
Go for it.
16.13 yards per completion. That's
That's
first
number
in the
1
nation.
in the country. I did see that
Number
as well.
2 is Hooker.
Wow.
Number 3 is Stroud. You know, so the dude's balling. Last year he had 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. This year he has 23 and 9.
Yeah.
You know, he's thrown 14 more touchdowns.
Man, give us Ohio State.
through
I'm
only
ready.
8 games, right? Like, bring
Give
on
us Ohio
Alabama.
State, I'm ready.
Bring on Alabama. I remember when I said North Texas was likely to make a bowl about 3 weeks ago, and I got shredded.
Yeah.
Shredded on Twitter. They're a 21-point favorite to win their 6th game of the year. 6 bowl games in 7 years. Inside track to be in the Conference USA Championship game. Like it or not, Mallory Hartley. Seth Luttrell is in your life for the next 3 to 4 years.
And I love Coach Luttrell. I do. But that's the thing is we've got to remember they're moving up.
Yeah.
They're going to be playing harder competition, and yes, they're doing well in Conference USA. But preseason or pre-conference wise,
Can we have an adult conversation? Is the American next year all that much different than Conference USA right now?
I think it is.
'Cause,
I
like,
think it's better.
Well, it is better, but like UCF is leaving, Cincinnati's leaving, Houston's leaving. We all kind of agree that SMU's probably that top tier program in the
Memphis.
conference move in Memphis, right?
Well, they lost to Memphis.
UTSA beat Memphis last year. You know, so like I think the top of I think North Texas has proven it can play with UTSA. You know, they
Yes.
last second touchdown loss this year, beat the brakes off of them last year. I don't think North Texas is that far away from being competitive in the American. I think we look at the American now and say, wow, that's a much better conference than Conference USA.
Mm-hmm.
But once the top end of that conference leaves, it just feels like Conference USA 2.0. And I don't think North Texas is all that far away from that. That's just my opinion. They could go 4-8 the next couple of years, but I don't think they're too far away from being a middle of the pack American team, and that's all they should be expected to be over the next couple
I think
of years.
to play kind of the middle here, to Mallory's point, where I probably would be concerned is we're now 2 years of them starting off the season pretty badly.
Right.
Yes.
And then to your credit, I think it's to Seth Luttrell's credit that they've been able to adjust and really turn into something.
because the
make a bowl.
competition is less.
Well, I mean, not even that. Like, I'd say, like, they've even just played, like, I don't think they beat UTSA or compete with UTSA if they played them in September, right? I think if they play UTSA after SMU, right, losing 48-10, I think they probably lose by double digits, right? I think there is adjustments on Seth Luttrell's part there.
Yeah, for sure.
Adjusting to the team better. And so, but to your point, I do think it is a little troubling how they started out back-to-back years just pretty badly, right? We were like, again, back in September, we were like, after 48-10 to SMU, you're like,
Well, yeah.
coming back? There's no way, right? We thought there was no way. We thought Marshall last year. There's no way, right?
Yeah, I wrote a Seth Luttrell.
Obituary, right?
Right.
You were
I
it's
wrote
good.
it.
Yeah.
I have it saved on my computer because
Right.
I thought after that game, there's just no way.
And so
I'm
I
gonna
guess
publish
that-
this eventually.
And so to play kind of in the middle here, and this is why wins like last week, and then if they come out and stomp FIU this week,
Right.
right? That would help where it's like, okay, now this probably is more what they should be like and what they can be like, right? Consistently. If they close out the year with 40 to 13s against Western Kentucky and then get a rematch with UTSA, lose close or beat them in the conference championship, okay, boom, we're back on track, right? Obviously, this is the direction we should still be going. But it doesn't surprise me that there's still some doubt based off 2 years back to back of weird starts where you're like, I don't know if, what was that game? What was that team, right? Who was that team all the way through September until we got to October? Now we know a team that's perfectly balanced, plays not great, solid defense, good defense, has a quarterback playing out of his mind right now, has a reliable running game. Where was that team, to start the year? You had the whole offseason to work on that, and you couldn't do it until you get to FIU, or FAU, I should say. So that's where I am at with this team. I think this program has proven that under Seth Luttrell, it does have an identity now. I'm trying to wonder, is that what he wanted from the beginning, or was something where they were working on all spring, all offseason? Well, that didn't work. Well, so we have to adjust kind of to revert. Because, again, back-to-back years now of that kind of happening. So
Right. Well,
that's where yeah.
And then 2 of those pre-conference losses were to American teams.
Sure.
SMU and Memphis.
Sure.
Also,
I'm not saying you should be doing backflips. I'm
Right,
just saying
right.
that it's true.
yeah. Right.
Like, you go 6-6, 7-5, 8-4, and you play in the conference championship game, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this is just a question. Would you say the bottom half of Conference USA is worse than the bottom half of
Oh,
current
100%.
American?
100%.
Right.
100%.
Oh,
So-
FIU, Middle Tennessee. I'm trying to think who else.
Charlotte, Rice.
Charlotte, yes,
Yeah.
Charlotte. I would take.
So that's
them.
also a kind of a concern, I guess.
I think I guess who's the bottom of the AAC? Like Tulsa,
Yeah.
USF.
USF. Yeah, I'd take USF over any of those. Yeah, so yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
But they're better than those teams.
Right.
Exactly. No, that's a good. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree. Like,
And I'm
It'll
not
just
saying-
be it'll just be harder week in and week out, I think, for North
100%.
Texas.
Sure.
Getting to 6-6 will be.
It'll be
will
much harder.
Be much harder. They'll have to change the non-conference schedule, and I think it's a great point by Ish is that you can't treat the non-conference schedule like non-district high school stuff.
Yes.
Because you're not trying to just finish at a certain pace in conference. You're trying to get to 6, 7, 8 wins.
Right.
And so, 7-5 needs to be the floor for North Texas
Mhm.
moving forward. But I think they're right there if they can continue getting quarterbacks
yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
Does
UTSA
Austin
without
Ani
Frank
have
Harris?
another year?
I
He does.
I'm legitimately curious.
I
if he-
can confidently say that he's got another year left.
Oh my god.
So,
And so does
bring back the Ani, man.
so does Frank
Oh
at
my
UTSA.
God.
Now that scares me.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that could be like
scares
30
me.
versus 24.
That is
Let's get it.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, Austin Ani is a junior. Oh my god. That rules so much. That owns so much.
We got to do a special graphic next year when North Texas and
I'm just
UTSA
waiting
play
for him to
again.
turn 30.
Yes, with the 24-year-old quarterback
Yeah.
going at it in college. Give it to
Yeah,
me.
I mean, Frank
Feed it-
might be
feed it to me.
25 by
I was
the
about
time.
to
Yeah,
Best
25 and 30.
Because he's going to be in his 7th year.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I
that
love
is really
that.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
you got to go to that game next year. You're going to that game next year.
We need a feature on that.
That's
I
a good
love
one.
it.
That's a
Hell
good
yeah.
one.
All
right,
What's our last?
let's-
game?
I will go anytime North Texas and UTSA play. I'm there.
I was about to say that's
yeah,
gonna be a
it's
banger.
always,
a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're moving to the
Together.
American together. It's such a good rivalry.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our last
Oh, Jesus.
game of the week. Ish, your Bobcats are back. Texas, well, they're playing
they
again.
won't
I don't
leave
know
me
if they're
alone.
going to be back.
They won't leave me alone.
They're Texas State
They
playing
are
out
on a field.
Louisiana Monroe.
Listen,
Saturday
that's
at
more
4
relevant
p.m.
now that they're playing UL Monroe. That is definitely right. They are on a field.
They are on a field
the line's
with
even, too.
lines on them.
The line is even,
Stinks.
which is a little
Flip a coin.
Flip a
Yeah. Look, I don't. This team has 3 wins, 4 games left. It's not the toughest 4-game stretch in the world. There's probably 2 games where they can win, and then they got to steal one against South Alabama or Louisiana, which obviously is hard. But if you're playing for anything, you got to win this week, right? If you're playing for
Yeah.
anything at any point this season, you got to win this week. They beat UL Monroe last year. Historically, they've been good against UL Monroe.
Sorry. That's a funny thing to say.
No, it is, right? Because who hasn't been historically good against UL Monroe?
Right. I was like,
But-
me too.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna pick them to win just because they should, and that's the only thing they have to play for is if they get this, and then Arkansas State in 2 weeks. So,
I broke Ish's heart before the show started because scoring defense wise in the state of Texas goes like this: Texas, Texas A&M, Baylor, Texas State.
they
Fourth
have
best scoring defense in the state, and they still only have 3 wins on the
and
year.
they are squandering it.
They instead of 3-5, they should be 5-3.
Yeah,
With an adequate offense,
Yep.
they're on a 3-game winning streak in the Sun Belt. One of the favorites to win a division that's winnable. Like they are rolling if they have a competent offense at all.
Offense.
they're 103 and 115 pass and rushing EPA offensively. If they are 80th and 75th, right, they are going bowling, and it is frustrating. They have
Yeah.
the 9th best rushing defense according to EPA on defense.
It was 2 weeks ago when you and I did the podcast. Who did Texas State lose to? They barely lost.
Oh,
Troy.
Troy. Yes. It was
We-
after they beat App.
Yes, because
Yes.
we were really frustrated talking about that game because the defense played fantastic. They had
Great.
they forced 3 turnovers something,
Yeah.
and the offense gave it away. And that just seems like that's the theme for this team.
And that's concerning when
Week
your
in,
head
week
coach
out.
is an offensive guy.
Right.
Yes.
And so this game isn't interesting to me if Texas State wins.
Sure.
Now, if Texas State loses, I am super interested.
Yeah.
Because how long does it go?
Right.
How long do you like you like does it
When do you start?
making the move, right?
When do you start in modern college football?
Right.
And we're all Jake Spavital guys.
Yeah.
I don't like having this conversation,
Right.
but it is what it is.
Mhm.
With modern college football and how quickly you need to get into the mix,
Mhm.
you got a new president and all. If you lose to Monroe, do you just eject then and start getting into we're looking for a new coach mode and just get in line right now?
I think it helps, and ironically, we just talked about North Texas. I think it helps that there's no other comparable programs in the state probably opening up,
Yeah.
right? If the other 2 programs probably are Rice and UTEP, who are different scenarios, right? Complete. So North Texas was the one I think was potentially worrying, right? Because obviously that would be the better job if that opened up at the same time as Texas State. But now you're kind of negotiating against nobody, and so.
Maybe Rice, but that's a
Right,
that's a
maybe
different
Rice
job.
if somebody wants to deal with those recruiting things and
That's a
things
different
like that.
job.
So
Yeah.
you're
different pool.
Exactly. Yes, different pool of candidates. So while I think if the move were to happen, if they lose this week, I don't think it would happen until if they lose next week. The minute they actually become ineligible for a bowl,
Right.
That's when I think it might happen. Because there's no like, again, this goes back to the negative of this tenure. There's no recruiting class to save. You know, there's no like, you're not really like, if you pull the ripcord, what do you do? You know, you really don't have to get a jump on the coaching search because you can take your time, right? Nobody's gonna look at is like, well, I don't know, I'm gonna look at, I don't know what else would open, Charlotte or Texas State. It's like, no, 2 different candidates, right? 2 different pools. So you're not pulling from the same
That's a good point.
crop. So that's my only thing I would say. But I agree that the next 2 weeks
It's
is that
important.
time. Yeah, this is when we're going to kind of figure out what's going on because he's heading into his last year next year. And as we know, coaches don't head into the last year of the contract. You either get extended or you get fired.
And the Sun Belt's only getting better and better.
Yeah, you know
So-
where you're going to be, right? Exactly. That's the other thing. You know where you're going to be. You know the conference isn't getting easier. It just got, added freaking James Madison.
And it's
kicking
not even that
everybody's
it's not getting easier. It's that you want to be a part of the party.
butt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Texas State is in the coolest G5 conference going right now.
Yep.
It has
You-
the most clout. It
Most
has the most
attractive
fun.
one, yeah.
Most people talk about it. Like it's got this cult status.
Mhm.
You're the only Texas team in it. Like you should be a part of that. It should be like Coastal Carolina, App State, Texas State. Like they should be talking about you. Now I know some of that's funding and
Sure.
backing and all that kind. But like you need to step all in. Like I want to see Texas State step all into the FBS ranks, and
Right.
it feels like they've half stepped the whole time they've been up there. If you do make a move, you need to bring some intention with it,
Mhm.
because if you're not, just keep Jake.
Right.
Like if this
Right.
is just what you're going to back somebody with, just keep them.
Right.
But if you're really planning on like getting into this conversation as a Sun Belt contender, you have to make some changes not only on the coaching staff but behind the scenes, and it just needs to be a whole overhaul of how Texas State approaches big time college football.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
I
And
can't. Yeah.
The worst thing that happened to Texas State, I think, since jumping to the FBS is UTSA and North Texas completely throwing everything funding
Yeah.
at football, right?
Right.
They open up Apogee Stadium in North Texas. They open up the indoor facility. Same thing with UTSA. They throw tons of money. They make Jeff Traylor the highest paid G5 head coach, right?
The
They
race building.
Exactly. All that stuff.
That weight
right?
room at UTSA is sweet.
Yeah, exactly. Complete overhauls of everything to completely invest and go all in on FBS football. And Texas State, had a head start on UTSA, and they drug their feet, right? So it is what it is. These next 2 weeks will be very, very fascinating when it comes to the future of the program. But